Hello, my name's Charlie, and this is a no-budget video. This is for the beginning ice boater, hoping to show you how to set up and make sure you got all your parts. Alright, so let's just say you purchased or acquired an ice boat of some sort. This is the DN style, Detroit News, the most popular one design. Created in the 40s, they find them in old barns, they find people that have upgraded to the more race-ready boats. Well, let's just assume you've got your first boat. Lay it all out, make sure you've got all the parts that you're supposed to have with it. So if we start over here at the fuselage, this is a basic fuselage, very useful for many trips or racing if you so choose desired. Want to be sure that you have your mast step included, that you've got your hexa ratchet block there, that you've got your forestay tang all set. Whether you've got one steering rod or cables, check to be sure that the fittings for them, like the nuts and the turnbuckles if they have them, are all secured and backed up with a stopper nut. You might want to check to be sure that the tiller actually turns the front steering chock. Be sure you've got two blocks on the back. Give them a good tug to be sure that they're not going to pull off in the middle of a tack somewhere down the line. You flip it over. You need a bobstay here. This creates a truss system that gives support to everything. This could be a V-type brace to it here, or you could have a little socket that a post goes into. So be sure that you've got the socket and the post if you've got one of the older boats. The runner plank, usually about 8 feet long for the DN. Some people will extend them in what they call a super DN, gives you a more stable platform. If you have a runner plank, that's an old one, what you might want to do is just set it down and bounce up and down on it. If it breaks, you know you're going to have to do something about it. They can be repaired, some fiberglass reinforcement. Look for any splits that might be occurring in the delamination from old glues or something like that. It's nice to have foot pads on here if you're running with cleats and want to hop in your boat. This will save the top surface of the runner plank without getting it scratched up. Your cap chocks here. Check all your nuts to be sure that they're tight, or your bolts that go through onto the chocks. You might want to check the chocks to be sure that there's no cracks in them from aluminum fatigue, or the wear spots, or that they're bent. As you set your runner plank down, your side tangs will generally point in a more forward direction rather than straight across. That tells you whether you got your plank forward or backwards on it. Side stays and front forestay. These are stainless steel. You want to lay them all out. If you've got an aluminum mast, or even with a wood mast, you should have a bolt here that holds the top triangle piece to everything. Pull that out, be sure you don't have any wear and tear on this bolt. They are replaceable. It's always nice to have a spare with you. But if you check at the beginning of the season, it'll usually last all season without a problem. Stop nuts everywhere because things tend to rattle loose. Go down each stay. Be sure that if you've got clevis pins and split rings in them, that they're good. You can even pull the clevis rings out because they will wear as well. And check that. Carefully run down each stay to be sure that you don't have any spiders, any broken strands in there. And depending on what type of adjusters you have on the end, these use quick pins. If you have the quick pin variety, it's handy to put a small little bolt right above your bottom one there. That will prevent these from spreading because these pins have been known to pop out. It's also, if you got extra adjustment here, a place to keep a spare pin in case you lose one on the ice. You got another one right handy to go with. So this is all looking pretty good. Your forestay, you might want to put a little telltale there to help you when see where the wind blows, or if there's enough wind to even sail. Some of these you can also put that spare split ring in there, which comes in handy on the Forerunner as a brake. There's a parking brake on them. This helps them keep in place. I'll show that in a bit. So the fuselage, the runner plank, the stays, the mast. This is an aluminum mast. You want to be sure that you don't have too much wear and tear on where the stay is attached at the head. If you go down the bottom, you want to be sure you've got the socket that fits over the mast step on the boat. You want to check both ends here to see if the aluminum is still holding itself true. Sometimes with wear and tear, they'll begin to split out. Be aware of that. You want to run your halyard. I'll show you that when I raise the sail. Be sure everything's running smooth inside. And depending on where it's stored, you might want to dump it up and get rid of all the acorns that are stored in there. If you have a wood mast, look that over carefully, and even suspend that between a couple sawhorses and press down on it and see if you have any cracks or splitting, or again, delamination where the wood joints are on it. If it sounds pretty true and tight to you, feel free to use it. The runners. These are Sarn's plate runners. So I'm not sure you can buy anymore. These are the bullnose variety. If you have an older boat, you may have what they call the alligator variety. These I sharpen in the fall or in the spring when I'm done sailing, and I put a light coat of grease on them to keep them from rusting. And these look like they survived the winter pretty good. This is your steering runner. Some of them will have two types of brakes. One will be on the back end here, which you use another quick pin in there, and that keeps it from popping off. Old style had the brake up front here, but it would sometimes drag along the ice. So this is a more solid brake. It's easy to convert it. All you do is drill two holes, one for the bolt, one for the quick pin. And again, that looks like it survived the winter pretty good, or the summer pretty good. The sails. If you have a wood boom, again, check the wood to be sure that it's good. You may even want to throw an extra coat of varnish on it if you have the time. Roll it all the way out. Check your plastic window to be sure that that's good, that your blocks are good on it. Adjusters, any screws that hold the track in, be sure that they're good. Your top shaft on the fore end. Check to see that your fork piece is still in good shape there, and that your tack is down pretty good, and the bolt on there is still good, nuts working and everything. You should unroll your whole sail. Take a look at your battens on them. Newer sails will have fiberglass battens. Check your headboard, watch for wear and tear along there where your bolt rope goes through. If you have adjusters on them, check to see that they're in securely. These tended to walk off a little bit, so I put duct tape on them. Looks like I need a new piece of duct tape there to hold things in place. And if you walk down the whole boat rope, be sure that things are good there, that you don't have any. First off, again, any mouse holes. These I store in a pretty mouse-proof place, so I'm not too concerned. Your batten pockets, be sure that they're not wearing through where the mast hits them there. You might want to put a patch there if so. And a lot of wear and tear goes on the sail here, so you might want to check this grommet down here to be sure that that's not wearing through onto your sail. If it is, get one replaced. Sail lofts can do that without much charge. It's usually take a hydraulic press to put the size one in that works best. Okay, if you have an older sail, there's a possibility you may have had wooden battens on it. Wooden battens tend to break a lot more than the fiberglass ones, so this is a storm sail I have. A little smaller in size, good for heavier winds, good for beginners to get their feet wet. But take each batten and give it a little flex like that to be sure that it's still in one piece. And it doesn't hurt to have some spare battens along with you. And again, the same thing. This one takes a little extra cable on it to give me the reach up to the top of the mast. Check your headboards, check your cables, check your shackles to be sure that they're all good. And again, your tap and flue grommets to be sure that they're solid. No real wear and tear along the bolt rope. Okay, that's the basics for the big part. Alright, now that you've checked and made sure that you've got all the pieces to put this beast together, let's start with the assembly process. First off, all the big pieces are out of the way, but be sure that you have enough of the small pieces. For example, your bolts to go through your runners, your nuts to hold the runner planks to the fuselage, your posts for your bob stay. Minimal amount of tools are actually needed for this. It's good to have a 9/16 socket. Often the extension is kind of nice. 7/16 wrench to hold the stays onto the mast, and a second 9/16 for the other end of the bolts, which hold the runners on. Most of them have a nut on the end. Some of them it's a threaded piece on the shock that'll screw right in. So whatever you have the parts for it. It's also nice to have a few extra things. For example, a screwdriver with interchangeable bits, a pair of vice grips for when things don't quite come off or go on like they oughta, and just a general pair of pliers. And that's about it for all the tools you need to put these things together or effect repairs along the way. Alright, as we start putting this together, it's nice to have little sawhorses to raise things up on. These are just made with carpeting and a little string to hold between them. The mice really like to chew on this rope, so check those before you hit the ice. It also raises it up high enough so that you can get the runners on them. So with that in mind, fuselage is set up on top. And if you have help, it's nice, but if you don't, these are relatively light. You want to line up the plates on the fuselage with those on the runner plank. Most of these are adjustable with 3 or more holes, so you can move the runner plank forward or aft depending on sailing conditions. And once everything falls into place, step one is if you put each bolt or nut on as you assemble that piece, chances are you won't forget them in the end. So the 9/16 and 2 lock nuts, be sure to use lock nuts because things tend to rattle loose out on the ice. Now when you put your fuselage to your runner plank, you want to make these snug but not too tight. If you crank down too hard on them, it's possible to shear the bolt that's sticking up or welded to the plate right off. So in your spare parts kit, it's always nice to have a spare stud plate with you. So one side done. Once you get your fuselage attached to your runner plank, the next thing you want to be sure you remember is your bobstay post. Fit it in the socket, lean over your boat, careful that you don't pinch your fingers. And when it snaps into the groove on the post, give it a little twang to see if it's tuned right. Some prefer B flat, some prefer A, sharp, so it's up to you. Alright, once that is done, you want to get your runners put on. Alright, in attaching your runners, I like to put the nut on the outside of the chock. That way if you see if it's coming loose or not. Some people will use Teflon tape along their runner where it goes in the chock to prevent wear and tear and also to help with alignment. Nine 16ths. Again, a box end and a socket work well for this. And be sure again that your nuts have a good lock on them. Sometimes the plastic wears out, and that'll help it rattle loose. Tightness wise, I like to have it easy to go up and down, but I don't want any side to side wiggle. When you hear that, you need to tighten it down a little more. And that's pretty good in my book. Alright, once that part's done, take a step back, be sure you got things as they're supposed to be. All nuts tightened, all the runners all around. Now you're ready to start stepping the mast. Alright, when you're ready to step the mast, first thing to do is attach the stays to the mast. Most people will take them off after each round of sailing, each day of sailing. And again, lock nuts are used on these, so be sure that they attach themselves solidly. This is 7/16 that I'm using here. And the next thing you do is separate your stays, and you want to attach whatever side the mast is laying on, that side stay and the fore stay. And again, quick pins are very nice, especially in cold weather, as to try to work a clevis pin and a clip to keep that in. Find a hole. Once you have those two stays attached, you want to step your socket onto the ball on the mast step. Once that is done, if you keep tension on the forestay, you can just raise the mast right up. You can do it one hand. That keeps things in place, keeps the socket on. Grab your other stay, be sure you're on the right side of the mast and everything. And be sure that those pins are all the way through so they don't pop out while you're trying to get somewhere. Take a look, see if everything's good. You like the rake. If you get into racing, you'll do a little more fine tuning as to the mast rake, where you step your mast and all that. But again, this is for beginners. Next, you want to rig your sail. I leave the boom on my sail. A lot of people will take the sail off the boom and put the boom on as the last step. Alright, now you're ready to raise the sail. At this point you're off the sawhorses, the boat's on the ice, and you want to be sure that your front parking brake is on just in case a gust of wind comes as you're raising sail. Always point into the wind. Today that's not a big issue. So I've got my brake down. What I'm going to do is take my extra pin and put it right behind that parking brake. That keeps it from accidentally popping off. Alright, next, be sure that your halyards are all set. Nothing's going to get in the way. This is an interior or internal halyard, so by simply attaching to the headboard, and this has some adjustments too. Again, figuring out what works best for you and what conditions is personal. So this gets slotted into the mast. And at this point, if the boom is on, it does make it a little hard to pull things up. And as your stops come out, there's two on this one, so you can adjust the height of the sail. And then some people will detach the halyard here. I just leave it on and tie her off with a shock cord around the mast. So far it hasn't caused me any problems by getting caught in the main sheet or anything. Just so it's securely out of the way. Attaching the main sheet, some people have a clip on here made through an ice splice to make things nice and neat. But as a sailor, it's always nice to refresh your skills with the bowline knot. Not in this video, but check out how to do it. I usually start at the end of the boom. First block is on the fuselage. The size main sheet you have is up to you, and the size blocks. There's a whole variety out there. I like something big enough so I can grasp it with a good leather or rubber palmed mitten. And then it's always nice to have some device along the boom here so the main sheet doesn't hang down and strangle you along the way. Run up forward, and the next thing you want to realize is which way your ratchet turns so that you don't have it going the wrong way. So you can click it that way. And then give it a good tug to see how everything's looking. And at that point, you're ready to put your helmet on, grab your ice picks, and join the crowd. Congratulations on having your own DN and enjoying a real fantastic cold sport.